President, thank you very much for accepting this invitation. I would like this to be more than just a talk. I want this to be a dialogue. I'm going to ask each one of you questions and then questions that I want you all to answer, and let's have an interaction. You heard already the introduction of the presidents, you all know them, and it's a luxury having you all here. This room was almost empty 30 minutes ago, and now it's full. Obviously, they are looking forward to hearing from you. They want to learn from you, from your experiences as chiefs in your respective countries. I would like to start with President Duque and ask you about the situation in Colombia, which is really complex. How do you see the situation in Colombia right now concerning the next elections? Well, first of all, it's a pleasure being here. President Fox, President Guaidó, and hello to everyone. And the situation that Colombia has today, I'm going to describe it this way. It's a government that is in deep ideology. It is radical, anti-entrepreneurial, and with a criteria of iconoclast. Uh, they have attacked the sector of health, also the energy sector. Today, a new resolution was published trying to change the contractual resolutions of energy matters. They also renewable energy investments are going down. A terrible execution in terms of budget, and every matter becomes a vision of state versus private initiative that brings uncertainty. Companies are not increasing the investments. They have operational budgets, and that translates into low levels of growth. Today, the president was celebrating an increase of 1.6 this year, and I thought it was kind of paradoxical when we had increases of in growth of over 10%, and then this time at that time we were the economy that was growing more. And it concerns me there is one intention by the government of capturing the electoral power. They are trying to throw down the person in charge of the election system through judicial action. So it's very important to take care of that. Also, the elections of 2026. This is something I've been proposing. I would like to overcome what in some countries it is called as a narcissism of minor differences. In the case of right and left and center, we have many coincidences, but one tiny difference can generate gaps that cannot be that have no way of going back. And I believe that we have to think of getting a huge Republican National Alliance for 2026 to have a significant convergence of powers and be solid and win the next election. How do you see the possibility of a possible constitutional reform to be for re-election? Petro has had that intention. He would like to stay to remain in the office, and he has expressed that publicly. The two mechanisms that are legit today constitutionally are an assembly or a plebiscite, and there's no time for any of those. And the fear that I expressed publicly is that I would like to capture the Constitutional Court in order to try to find some figure and maybe not exactly a re-election, but trying to extend the presidential mandate, having control over the constitutional court and have that support. That fear exists. The country is paying attention to this. The fear is present, but I believe that we have to make room for that, and this is positive. The presidential campaign was, done ahead of time, so we have several good candidates, also outsiders, people with more political formation, but also with a clear discourse. I believe the challenge we all have is leave the ego aside and consolidate that national Republican alliance and win the elections in 2026? Okay, thank you very much. President Fox, you all know that President Fox finished with 71 years of age of hegemony of the institutional pre-revolutionary party, and he was the chief of the government, and he became the first president of the PRI in 71 years. That's something historical, and it consolidated with his successor, President Calderon. And today, Mexico has a different government from what Fox left. So, how do you see the situation in Mexico? First of all, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure being here in this forum. And let me congratulate all of you. We only had good news in the morning, great ideas, great paths to achieving development, and now the politicians are here to, mess up with everything. The party is over, because here to my left I have the one that has suffered the most, also one who is in the way, and me, who has already seen where we're heading to. So everything that the president just said, that is correct. And in Mexico, it is also like that. There are still things to happen. In our case, they already happened. Today, there is a current that is very wide of this new way of making politics outside of the political parties. This new method of doing politics without knowing how to govern, this new way of doing politics, which is just deceiving, and which is a new path. And we have to be prepared, at least in Latin America, for that. And actually, we have not found a solution, because from that side, they are playing totally out of law. They are playing just giving prizes, donations, money to buy votes. And also on that side, the election processes are played with the absolute certainty of who is going to win, and they are the ones who will win. Therefore, we have a giant challenge ahead of us, for us who believe in democracy, for us who believe in the freedom and respect to human rights, especially respect to the law. Which is what has been lost. And in Mexico, we are in a situation that is extremely complex. And there is hope that the new president, with her female face, is going to be different. But do not come here to tell me stories. I know who speaks in a certain way, who expresses themselves in a certain way. We know the path they are taking. Ergo, it's time that in Latin America we move forward, we go ahead, and we fight with culture. We fight to win the position of other government systems and other ideologies. Hence, I will remain fighting. I'm still working hard, not only in Mexico, but also in Venezuela, as much as I can, in Nicaragua as well, and anywhere where those liberties have been lost. Some people are born with that thought, and we're going to die with that thought. President, in this same scenario, in the previous edition of this forum, we gave Don Mario Vargas a recognition, and he said that Mexico was the perfect dictatorship. That obviously changed with your election in 2000. Today, regardless of the ideology of the president, is Mexico a complete democracy? It is stopped being it. And we have to rescue the country. We have to work hard to go back to a path that is more productive. And I'm not criticizing just to criticize the ideology or to criticize people who are today in the government. It's not a social democracy. It's not socialism that plays within the rules of the game. It is something different. It's a new phenomenon. And it is changing the face of the world in terms of democracy. And I believe that We have been silent for a long time, thinking that that was resolved. The differences had been resolved, the alternatives. And it's not like that. Today we have this new phenomenon. And I'm saying this because I have not seen any results in Mexico. The previous president destroyed the international airport that was supposed to be the prettiest and bigger airport worldwide, and it was destroyed. It was 80% of its construction ready. Many millions of dollars had been invested, and it was all thrown away. And from that point onwards, institutions have been destroyed, balances in the exercise of power. Therefore, you can no longer remain silent and stop seeing what is happening in front of your eyes. However, the only positive that I still see is that maybe because this nation, it's a society, it's a citizenship, diversities, also its companies and technology, they are already moving beyond a president, and I hope it keeps going like this. Because if the president becomes observant, if they try to lock this huge nation within walls and oceans, that's just frustrating the real possibilities of that nation, only preventing progress. I believe it is imperative to have trade and act as a leader in this nation and around the world. Leave aside that Uncle Sam stick and build consensus and ways to development. We all need that desperately today. Thank you, President. If the situation in Colombia is complex, if it is complex in Mexico, it doesn't compare to what's going on in Venezuela, which is really a desperation. Approximately 5 hours ago, we had the privilege of having the president-elect Edmundo Gonzalez of Venezuela, and we asked him about what was going to occur next January 10th. As you know, last July 28th, there was an election, inverted comma, in which Edmundo Gonzalez not only won, but won with flying colors, over 2-1 as a margin. However, the current government has not recognized that win, and the president-elect is in Spain now. How do you see the situation in Venezuela? What do you think is going to happen next January 10th? First of all, thank you, Carlos, for inviting me. I appreciate the Adam Smith Center, a constant effort to turn Florida a center representing democracy and freedom. You are a champion. And President Fox, you're a constant, coherent voice fighting for freedom. I appreciate representing the Venezuelans. I want you to see that date as a huge opportunity. July 28th, the Venezuelans again showed their resistance, their fighting, their courage in a game which is unfair, an election that was not an election, it was a fraud. Maria Corina was a candidate elected by the people, and they tried to eliminate her as if that was something that could be erased, the hope of an entire country. So the next January 10th is inauguration day, and there is a dictatorship. There's no doubt about it. It cannot be relativized. That would be just being victims as a society and pulverize democracy. It's like telling people that voting is not enough. We will show that we defeated a dictator 3-1 out of the people that could vote, because 5 million could not vote. That would have been 5-1, the difference that we showed. And let's see January 10th as not as an end game, not a final game to democracy. I'm saying this with caution, but with hope. And if we use this metaphor, we have an amazing crew: Maria Corina Machado, Edmundo Gonzalez. So it's the possibility of recovering our country, a new administration. And in 2019, with President Duque and all of our friends, this government was recognized. And today it is simpler. It's a government elected by the people's sovereignty. Now we have to bring the international community. We have to do everything in our power to be able to achieve what we're looking for. It's not like we do not want the oil companies. We want them all with the rule of law, with respect to our constitution. We want that. We would like to reinvest in the oil industry. So it's a golden opportunity starting January 10th, when the president-elect should take office. We have to protect the president-elect of Venezuela. We could not deliver him to a dictatorship with the proper answer by the international community, which is not enough just, patting our back. We appreciate the good intentions, but we have to be responsible and eliminate impunity of dictatorships, not only in Venezuela, but also in Nicaragua, in Cuba, that are promoting and generating migration. As you know, Carlos, the greatest immigration history in this continent, promoting drug trafficking. They are sanctuary territory to the ASFARC, who have attacked President Duque, also for cartels, drug cartels in Mexico, and human trafficking. So it's not just a problem of Venezuela, it's a Latin American problem to stabilize the region. I hope that with the new administration, as was said at the beginning, that was that was a result of democracy. I hope that we can conclude the process and start January 10th. If the president-elect asked me my advice for January 10th, I would say let's feel that playing with people. We have a very clear route. Let's feel that with the right people, the government that we need to be with us, and the destination is clear. It is democracy and freedom for Venezuela, and that's going to have repercussions, no doubt, in the entire continent. President, I'm coming from the future, unfortunately, but also I know how to uh, stop these populist dictatorships in the region. In summary, I have a lot of optimism. It's not just a new beginning for this process that we have built for years in Venezuela. And 2025 is a great opportunity to reestablish democracy. And I ask you, and you've done it, President Duque, President Fox, I hope that you can be there with us in this new phase. And it's also an interesting date for the Venezuelans, January 10th and January 20th. And yes, I want an air ticket for that plane. He's starting the process of going back. President, you know that I've criticized the Venezuelan opposition publicly for years. It's shown to be unity, but not real unity. And this time there is real unity. The opposition, the leaders of the opposition, and I want to thank one of them, Leopoldo Lopez, for facilitating the interview with the president. Thanks to him, we were able to talk to the president today. The position of Venezuela, not only the people in the streets, are the leaders united? Well, let's look at the Venezuelan opposition as a private company in Venezuela. Let's make that comparison. Can you imagine the wear of the private company in Venezuela, the attacks, the political parties? Pay attention. They have more political prisoners than Russia, Nicaragua, and Cuba all together, including Maria Corina's team, who is in the Argentinian embassy. And thanks to October 22nd, 2023, the effort that was made to reunite the opposition as a tool to fight. Oftentimes, they would say that we were not united, but that was an excuse. We've been united for many phases with um, for the good and for the bad, and we've learned a lot. We have reunited the opposition. And many mistakes have been made, of course, that always will happen. But we, 1 decade ago, won several initiatives, 37 attacks against me. So many things that took place. And today we still have the same manual. The alternative today for democracy is that requirement, that foundation to challenge a dictatorship. We have that. We have unity, not only because we have a president elect, but also the purpose. The change in Venezuela represents stability in the region. It represents not only rule of law and opportunities, but it also represents part of the peace in Colombia. No more sanctuary for illegal groups in the region. It represents the possibility of a strategic alliance, energy alliance in the region. And think of this for a second, talking about unity in Venezuela, in America, not only Latin America, free continent from Canada to the Patagonia, the power that it generates as a tool, not only for negotiation, but for many people in Latin America, reducing poverty, forced immigration. That works as today. Pay attention. Today, Maduro uses migration as a weapon to negotiate with the powerful countries in the world, especially the US. It's like saying that they are going to reach an agreement because of the migration issue, etc. That's what they are saying, that the lobbyists, they are selling that. And let me say something. If you intend to weaponize immigration, human beings, souls, that's not going to work. We are not tools. We are human beings with dignity, and we want to go back to our countries in democracy. So the best tool right now for immigration, energy, that's democracy. It was talked about. They said it's the economy. Stupid. Well, during the election here, it was talked about, and immigration is not about economy. It's about democracy. Stupid. In this moment in the continent, that's saying we can achieve the cause of the problem through promoting, as Trump said in 2019, and let me repeat this, he was a promoter of this, the democracy in the continent. Question to all. Let's talk now.
Now let's talk. I see Latin America from the point of view that someone that has been involved with the U.S. Politics. What the U.S. should do in order to take back the leadership that they have lost. Tip for the new administration to prioritize LATAM, to pay attention to the region. What does the United States should do? What should the U.S. do? I would say the following. The slogan of the campaign, Great America, Make Again. America will never great again without doing the America's great. In order for the America's great to work, we have to think a legacy of 4 years that is undebatable. And the first legacy is to leave a region free of dictatorships. That should be a purpose. Why? If there is no diplomatic ambition to reinforce what unites us, which is democracy in the hemisphere, that would be pending homework before going to the how. Number two, they have tried to, Maduro and other dictators have tried to sell that the migrations is a consequence of sanctions. No, the migration crisis is generated by a dictatorship, the destruction of a free press, economy, democracy, etc. So defending that democracy is key. Safety and security, that should be considered as a public good and a democratic value. And we have insecurity in those regimes that are permissive with drug dealing. In Venezuela, for example, they are friends of the terrorists. The politics that we are seeing in Nicaragua to facilitate drug trafficking, and Cuba. with the worst dictatorship and the protection of the Maduro's administration. So, if we want to have a region free of dictatorship, we have to eliminate Maduro's regime. And we need three things to happen immediately. There is no case for the International Criminal Court to delay this. They have all the evidence to release this order to stop Maduro as soon as possible. In the United States, we have to increase the reward for Diosdado, Maduro, Turek, and at the top of the Solis cartel in Venezuela. And regarding January the 10th, there should be a message by the hemisphere, especially from the United States, to say the military and the law enforcement forces, there is a legitimate president-elect, Edmundo Urrutia, with acts that are signed, and you should be in the right side of the history. If you do that, if you facilitate the inauguration of the president elect and to start the democracy rebound, you will have a chance. Otherwise, there will be more sanctions against them, their families, and their properties. And last but not least, we have to get back the institutionality in the hemisphere so that they are clear enough in their messages. So the inter-American system through the court, the commission, and the OAS can exert the right of the whole region that want to see the end of the three dictatorships, Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. That would be the best legacy to make America great again. Otherwise, that should be just a democracy. I haven't heard anything about the military option. Is that out of the table? The military option should be seen internally, I would say. The military option should be that the military forces and the police support the constitution together with the president elect. And I have to be clear because there is no arguments to avoid that. Juan knows that. 4 years ago, Juan was recognized. Why? Some people even don't remember why Juan Guaidó was recognized. Maduro stole the elections in May 2018 when he stole the elections, when the Grupo de Lima was created and most of the countries didn't recognize the result. The assembly appoints him acting president the day when Maduro wanted to position himself again, and we got the largest diplomatic mobilization in the hemisphere to isolate that regime. We wouldn't be here if we didn't have people that are courageous as Guaido. Maria Corina, who is an expert in election control, got over 83% of the acts that have been published today. Because dictators said that they have the acts, but they never showed them because the real acts are well known, and the police and the military forces today, they don't have a different option. Or they support democracy or they will be sanctioned. January the 10th, there should be a large national and international mobilization to support the democracy in Venezuela. If we don't do that, we won't be winner. President Fox, Guaido, something to add? Sure. This is the exercise of different alternatives. I'm not speaking specifically about Venezuela, but the case of how we are going to win globally a virtuous cycle of development like we had back in the 90s all the way to 2010 or beyond. A virtuous cycle of development where we got millions and millions of people in the middle class in the world, millions and millions of graduated students in universities. We won all. We won 20 years of life 20 more years of life. So, an offensive with the original spirit of the United States and the founding fathers and the strategies and the pathways that they created. We want the presence of U.S. corporations, U.S. colleges and universities, and they went out to the world to show the way. Let me share a brief story. In Canada, the presidents and the prime ministers of Latin America and North America had a meeting, and President Bush, 43, he presented a proposal that was to get a continental agreement for free trade, a free trade agreement, as a major development tool. I was the free North American free trade agreement that was accepted by all the nations of the continent, and there was one dissident, only one person that was against, and it was Hugo Chavez. Sorry, we have always faced that, and that was against this great initiative because provoking the growth, make it that with a goodwill, with a democratic sense, respect for human rights, that would be a great offensive. But today, this country is isolated. They don't want to make trade when the success of this country was a result of trade and exchange with other countries of the world. And today, since China is now selling cars in Mexico, that bothers this country, the United States. Well, it's a competition. We have to face competition. And it seems to me that around the economic management, there could be the solution of these problems. Otherwise, we will be making micro efforts. We have to integrate the efforts in one direction so that we are able to add up, and defend citizenship to fulfill that purpose. In Mexico, we are now in the second term, I would say, of those 6 years of the previous president when he destroyed the nation, and now we are in the second stage of that process. Unfortunately, the stronger the control is, the stronger the control of elections is, it is going to be more difficult to end that situation. And I believe in leadership, and in this panel, we have leaderships in the world, we have leaderships in our nations, we have leaderships. A leader that is convinced, a leader with a purpose, with a vision, is able to change the whole world. So those leaderships came up in Venezuela. We have seen them. They started breaking the wall down. President Guaidó and my great leader, Maria Corina Machado, who is the libertarian of Venezuela, and things will have to happen. But we all have to be there protecting these heroes, protecting and defending the supporters, their supporters in that dictatorship. Your presence is indispensable. Not to be comfortable here, we have to save the nation in order to come back to the nations and to come back to the homeland. Three things: my expectation, the fact, and what I would suggest for a new American society. This integration based on economy, respect, democracy, and rights. Expectation to obtain the full integration of the Americas taking into account Latin America with the main assets, energy, minerals, tourism, food, human talent. There is a huge potential to grow in Latin America. My expectation is to have this strategic society with the United States. Marco Rubio, State Secretary Lando, deputies, there is a statement, a message of the new administration prioritizing Latin America. There is a great opportunity there. So, considering how to improve this, my co-panelist spoke about this before. We have to eliminate the dictatorships in the region. Only with the democracy, the life can thrive, the economy can thrive, people can thrive, as well as the rights. Only within a democracy. Security, safety, organized crime. We have to tackle organized crime not only in Venezuela, but also throughout the region. They weaponized that in order to have different negotiations with Iran, Russia, and China. We have to have a balance. We have to stop the influence of China by promoting investments, by increasing the presence of U.S. corporations in the region. We have spoken about Latin America, for example, and this could happen very, very fast. And the challenge in the short term is how to multiply that. And I said that in order, by the way, without rule of law, without democracy, without stability in the region, it will be impossible to tackle the organized crime, not only in Latin America, but also Russia, China, Iran, Hezbollah, in the center of America, in our region, and everything that that represents to us. A huge opportunity, and I'm not going to repeat that. We have a president elect, a resilient society, and the will of Venezuelans to complete what we started back in 2019, to complete a very long, painful process that is being seen in the region. The Tren de Aragua criminal organization, they were very important in the elections in the U.S. Tren de Aragua is an operational franchise of the Soles mentioned by President. In fact, the holding of that crime is the Soles cartel that is headed by Maduro, and the operational franchise is Tren de Aragua in order to outsource crime and to penetrate the whole continent. So the potential, because I feel speaking about expectation, we now have a new possibility to promote democracy in the continent, but this should be a priority. Now, the statement, the fact, with the new state secretary and leaders that continue raising their voice beyond their borders, such as President Duque with the climate. Thank you. Speaking about democracy, and now President Fox, that is senior fellow at the university. Thank you for being very active. Once again, January the 10th, and please become multipliers of the possibility of this rebirth of democracy in Venezuela. One more question, and if the answers are brief, I would like to open a Q&A session for the audience. A criticism not for you, but some of your colleagues. The British PM Churchill said that democracy was the worst system except for all the others. This is not a perfect system, but it's the best that we have. In order for the democracy to work, the common citizen should feel that it works. And a major problem that we see in some governments led by serious leaders, respectable and democratic democratically elected, some of them from the center or right, don't have a good communication, while the leftist leaders, have a better communication. They can persuade better. What can be done so that those leaders are more focused on the narrative in the communication and less on the design of public policies, which is very important, but to prioritize a communication? If the citizen does not feel that the government is working, the government plan could be exceptional, but cannot be sold. How can we do that? With all due respect, Carlos Diaz, I disagree with the introduction of the question. 7 months ago, I was at the Oxford University. I was invited to the Latin American Study Center, and they spoke about the Latin American sadness. And I said, well, let's take the last 30 years in Latin. We have increased the average of life expectancy. We expanded the middle class. We have more coverage in healthcare, water, education. We reduced mortality. We increased the export as part of the GDP, the largest investments, infrastructures, and mean in terms of development, human development, and improvement in social conditions. That's a lot. So I don't agree with you because there is a phenomenon now in the region that is post-truth, populism, and polarization, which is the mix, the combination of those that call themselves progressist, but they have impoverished their country when they governed. And they have the narrative of destruction, and they have partnerships or coalitions to support that destruction by using teachers' unions, for example. They take over school systems. In the case of Chile, for 10 years, they said that everything was bad in Chile. And the results of Chile after the latest government of Piñera are very, very bad. But they don't say anything about that because they are participating in that destruction.
I believe that today we need to defend market economy, and the ones who defend democracy, we have to have a coalition with the entrepreneurs and not have that uh, shameless attitude. And we have to defend ourselves from this situation and win the discussion with the message through evidence. I believe that's where we have to battle successfully. And I go back to what I said first: narcissism of minor differences in the right and center of the Latin Americans. We are full of divisions for minor things and big egos. And today, we have to recover the sense of defense of economical freedom, democracy, and the defense of achieved results in democracy, or we're going to give for free what those that are looking for the opposite want. I agree, but as long as all the indexes have improved, today we have two dictatorships that we didn't have 30 years ago in the region. And that's because they can sell well, they have a good narrative. Yes, but it's not because they communicated well. It is also because in the hemisphere, the voices that could defend and call things that where they should be called are over. I'll say something concrete. When Noriega stole the elections from Guillermo Indara, the U.S. was there to reestablish democracy in Panama and allowed Panama to recover democracy. Military intervention, yes, and if that option at that time was used, that's because that was the only option possible. But today we need in the United States that you also understand that the free determination of the countries of the peoples is not the ones from the bad guys. And when that appears, it requires defense of the democracy. I also want to add, and I totally agree, the the fact of staying there has to be with impunity and weapons. and that's what it is represented today by the hyperpolarization that threatens democracy, not only in Latin America but worldwide, and also what populism represents to have access to or to have an election market, just like happens in Mexico. So what we cannot allow to happen is the impunity. Impunity when taking action, and also consequently a rule of law. So we have to evaluate options and see how to improve things. And let me give you the word, President Fox, I'm sorry, from 2019 until the date in Venezuela, pro-democratic moment, we were able to achieve what we achieved, and then we got to this point. As Duque said, it was through the effort of thousands, and Maria Corina resisting today, Edmundo Gonzalez today. But there's also an important debate, which is the recovery of democracy. It's different from protecting it. Part of what we do in Democracy Island, I mean, in the center. So we have to know how to recover effectively the democracy in countries that lost it, like in Venezuela. So that's how you denominated it. The targets of economic enablers that sustain dictatorship, the reward to a dictator and the enabler. So the big question today, not only for Latin America, Belarus, but what is the extra mile? What is that we're missing today to finish? And it has to do with this language of nonviolence, Gandhi, Mandela, etc. Do not misinterpret me, but the uh, believable threat, and that they have fear of acting to what they consider to be impunity, and we should have a red line to stop horror when there are political prisoners, organized crime, etc. Now, I will um, say what is our fault, mea culpa. We we have provided these liars, these terrible people who are looking for power, the poor citizenship. There is a very clear divider. The half that do not have, that's 100% theirs. And the other half who have something, that's usually in our thoughts. So let's recognize that in Latin America, we have failed completely when generating enough middle classes that are illustrated. And I put myself in that position, and that's also my fault. I still think that we have lost in the battle of time to get those middle classes, where there are no middle classes and there's extreme poverty, where there's no education of at least a reasonable quality. There are these problems that have led us to this situation. If I could be again the president of Mexico, I would have only one and unique conviction on what to do more for that 50% that oftentimes does not have what is needed. And especially the worst distribution that we have is the distribution in education. There's much more failure in the way that we educate, that we grow our citizenship and achieving leaders with the capability of transforming. That's fatal in Latin America. This drive that we are thinking of right now, that could start by removing the dictators and dictatorships, but it has to start as a gigantic crusade of education, because there's only one way to change a nation in a generation, and that is through education. That's where we have to accelerate and achieve urgent results. Today, technology provide us with those capabilities, those possibilities of creating a huge um, revolution in education throughout LATAM. Don't forget this. Along with Africa, we are the country that has been more affected, Latin America, and also the ones who have the lower education levels in the world. We have to elevate the levels of education. In China, for example, where there's no democracy, they have been able to overcome uh, economical growth with gigantic steps. We also have to recognize that these dictators, these populists, and these bad politicians have reached the power because of our deficiencies. That's why I personally thank you all for accepting this invitation to be here and help educate and inspire the new generations. Time is up, but let's wait for a little bit because we cannot finish without the audience having the opportunity to ask a couple of questions. The lights are very bright. I cannot see well, but there's one here and one there. Let's go. One and one. Well, there's many questions. Uh, Hello, good afternoon. My name is Manuel Valdivia. I'm from Peru, and the question is for President Fox. We hear a lot about blaming Mexico as a gateway for the drug that comes into the United States. We hear a lot of noise about that in that part of the story. However, we hear a little about consumption. And in my opinion, I think that if we eliminate consumption, if the United States could eliminate consumption, there would be no incentive to bringing drugs from outside. Sometimes Peru is also blamed. So, what could you tell us about consumption? What can we do in that department to raise the voice as to that idea? I'll give you. Uh, I mean, you are right, 100%. But the United States prefers to attack the production, to attack the offer, and not doing enough in terms of consumption here. That should be a message for Trump. Somehow he wants to stop that, and in a certain measure that has to be stopped here in Mexico. We ask ourselves every day what happens when the drug, the fentanyl, crosses the border. Who brings it here to Miami? Who takes it to Washington, New York, Seattle? Who are those distributors? Who are the ones that are transporting the drug and delivering it to the consumers? There's no enough effort here in that sense to concentrate the effort in order to stop the demand. And we also have that task of the supply. Mexico, we are not big consumers of drugs. We are not big producers. However, we are the transit place. I mean, half of the way, and that has contaminated strongly consumption inside Mexico as well, because the drugs that are there, they stay there sometimes, and they have a very cheap prices. So we need a coordinated action. We need something very well standardized by everyone, and I mean, believing in democracy, believing in freedom, that's the only thing that will allow us to uh, do that effort. I was surprised by the proposal from President Bush 43 in Canada. He proposed to create this agreement of free trade, and pushing the cart together, sharing the ideology of freedom, free economy, and commerce, and all of that cannot be stopped in areas of a strong America, a winner America. It has to be, as the president said, it has to be the Americas, the entire continent, and hopefully the entire world. Because at the end of the day, you can build the taller possible wall, and a person who is hungry is going to jump that. You can build a river with a lot of water, but who is hungry is going to find a way to swim and cross that river. Migration cannot be stopped with prohibitions, with walls. We must have a deep dialogue and find a method to conciliate interests and to resolve that problem that is the problem we have today and the problem of the future. Um, um, Illegal migration cannot be stopped, but it can be controlled and minimized. Hello, I'm Paula from with the government of Broward County, the second biggest county. I work in the government, and my question is strategic. Now we are working in a triangular strategy to bring um, to help Africa and Asia. They're growing, and we want them to connect to South Florida and promote Latin America and the Caribbean. What are your ideas for us to work together, Latin America and South Florida, to bring investments from those continents? Thank you. For the three of you, well, I would like to emphasize something. If there's one state of the United States that knows about the importance of Latin America, that's Florida. Not only it is the gateway for a lot of trade, but also tourists and investors, Latin American investors that are arriving in this state. So, for example, I ask many people to reflect on this, on how the Latin American trade helps not only Florida, but also the entire East Coast. Just to give an example, Colombia exports flowers. We are the greater flowers country exporting flowers, and many trucks are filled with the product, and it is 5 cents the metric ton to go up all the way through the East Coast, and then it's a way of helping the logistics and the economy of the state of Florida. I believe that we have to look at this region in that strategic sense with those eyes. I also agree with a nearshoring, as the president said. It's not just establishing businesses in Latin America. It is leaving other regions where there is authoritarianism, pressure, um, low environmental standards, and moving to a region that has better um, working standards in terms of benefits for the workers, and also generating work jobs. That nearshoring could attract the necessary investments in order to generate the incentives to remain in the countries. Why do many people migrate? It's not in vain. Who is willing to cross the border does it because of oftentimes famine and disastrous situations, and when they cross, it multiplies because of the exchange. If the investment arrives, it generates jobs and income that is dollarized because of the job of integrated trade between Latin America and the United States. And I want to say this: the state that can speak better about talent, the capabilities of Latin America, that's Florida. I hope that all the states would know this. So, any other comments? Very briefly, today is December 11th. I've been in South Florida for 19 months and 16 days. I was forced to exile as a result of the dictatorship, but being here has also allowed me to see the cultural diversity, which has been an effective integration in a Latino community. And recently, the Secretary of the State of Ascendance for the first time in Latin American history. So this opportunity in terms of cultural diversity today, as I call it, the capital, the cultural capital today in Latin America, there is a lot of room to promote the democracy, freedom, economic integration in the region, and something fast, not only through the port and the proximity that it has uh, to the region in the strategic level, and also the possibility of connecting this to other continents. There is a conductor, a direct conductor. That's why we have to work in Latin America to work towards the rule of law, the trust that exists in economy, and then transport this to the migrants, integration of the migrants, and border control. It is interesting also differentiating the integration of migration and controlling the borders. That has to do with part of the criminals that that have arisen. So I think there is a golden opportunity for South Florida to integrate Latin America with the rest of the world and becoming also a hub, a global hub. As you can tell, we could be here for hours chatting. There are still many questions from the audience, but the presidents are here. That was very important. Democracy innovation, as President Guaidó mentioned, that he directs in the center. It's a great initiative to defend democracy and to do everything in our power to fight and to recover democracy in those countries who have lost democracy. They also manage a program of environment, and we are negotiating with President Fox to see how we can keep him involved, and also we want to do things with the Fox Center. So you'll be here many times again, hopefully, and there are many um, public employees of the United States and Latin America. I cannot see you all, but I can see the former minister of the Ecuadorian government, ex the former media director of the White House, the former ambassador of the United States in the Dominican Republic, and some others probably that I've not been able to see. But thank you all for your service. Thank you, presidents, for your leadership in Colombia, Mexico, and Venezuela, and thank you all for being present. We'll see you on January 10th. Buy the ticket to January 10th.